Oh, hey there, folks. Don't worry about me. I was talking with a fellow Batman fan, this big, strong, intense fella. He was telling me how much he loves that Batman is so brutal when it comes to taking down his villains. And, well, I told him that that's a gross misrepresentation of the Batman character. And then after that, I turned around and ran into a tree branch. Anyway, it's been about a week since all of this happened, so I think I can probably take this off now and resume my conversation about what I think makes Batman so great. That's not the fact that he's brutal and he's strong and he can lay down justice. I think that what makes Batman so great is the human side to him. The ability for him to see hope in his villains, for him to see the humanity in his villains and to feel empathy towards them. This is a side of Batman that I think hardcore Batman fans are very familiar with. But I think the more general audience maybe misses this side of Batman. And that's what I want to use this video to talk about. I want to highlight Batman being this hopeful, empathetic being that he is by talking about a handful of moments that highlight this in the best possible way. So let's get to it. Batman the Animated Series, or I think this episode was technically under the Adventures of Batman and Robin banner. Regardless, there was plenty of episodes and moments in this series that emphasized exactly what I'm talking about with Batman, that show off his empathy, or at the very least, show a side to villains that isn't just pure evil. It shows the humanity within them. It's one of the things that makes the series so great in my mind. This particular episode explored a character called Baby Doll. And Baby Doll is an actress who has some sort of condition,
systemic hypoplasia.
Thank you, Batman, that prevents her from growing up. She always looks like a little kid. And because of this, even though she was 20 years old or so, she could play the role of a tiny child in a very popular comedy TV show. But alas, time moved on, the show was no longer on the air, and she was never really able to move on to other roles. She tried some more serious things and didn't really work out for her. She couldn't get back into this comedy TV show. I think the network wouldn't air it or something like that. And, well, she's left in kind of a tough spot. So what she ends up doing is kidnapping the cast that she used to work with on this TV show and essentially holding them hostage as she lives out this fantasy of a time in her life where things were better when she was part of this comedy show that was so good. She is trying to relive that as if it was real life, even though that's not at all reality. For her, reality is much, much harsher. And this is kind of hard to watch. It's obviously very messed up what she's doing, where she's kidnapping these people, holding them hostage and all that. But at the same time, you can't help feel bad for her because, in part because of her condition, she can't move on to other roles. So this comedy show is kind of the peak of her life, and she's just trying to hold on to that as much as she can, which I think all of us have tried to hold on to parts of our lives that we loved, even though at some point we do have to move on. So you can absolutely empathize with her when it comes to that. Of course, Batman eventually stops her, and the moment that stands out to me is at the very end of the TV show when this happens. To me, this is just kind of a beautiful moment. Again, it really shows off the humanity of this character that was earlier in the episode portrayed as just really kind of unhinged and evil. At this point, you can kind of start to see the pain that she is going through and understand why she might do this. Again, it's not an excuse, but it is an explanation. And you can kind of empathize with her a little bit. And of course, the moment I want to point out here is Batman giving her a little hug to comfort her in this very difficult moment. This is more than likely an example of that little scoundrel recency bias causing some trouble again, but I just recently read an issue of Nightwing where we see Batman in a flashback training Dick Grayson, and in this moment, Dick Grayson is, basically sparring with Batman, and he ain't holding back. He's beating the daylights out of Batman. And Bruce makes a point to stop and tell Dick that, hey, listen, this is going too far. Our goal is not to hurt criminals. Our goal is to stop them so that they can face justice. which I think kind of takes the Batman no-kill rule to another level. I think there's kind of this popular idea that, Batman will beat you within an inch of death, but he won't actually cross that line. It's kind of a meme at this point that's what Batman does. And I do think there are some iterations of Batman for which that is probably true, or at least has some elements of truth to it. But I really like this line, this idea that Batman kind of views his role not to hurt anybody beyond what he has to, but his role is simply to stop them and make it so that they can face justice through the systems that we have in place as a society. All right, so this one is probably a little bit more well-known than the other moments on this list. At least I would think it is. And I should definitely say that this one here, this moment, is a massive spoiler for anyone who is interested in playing the Batman Arkham video games. You've been warned. At the end of Arkham City, we see a Joker who is dying, who's very close to death. But Batman has the antidote that can save Joker. And through an unfortunate series of events where ultimately it's Joker's fault, that vial of antidote is spilled on the floor where it's useless. It can't be used to save Joker anymore. So Joker ends up dying. But before Joker actually dies, Batman tells him,
"Even after everything you've done, I would have saved you."
And I think this really speaks to what I'm trying to get at with this list. You got Joker, who obviously has done terrible things.
Rhino, baby. Failure to adequately restrain a rhino.
And Batman, not only is he not willing to kill Joker, he's also not willing to let him die when he has the opportunity to save him. And I know some of you are saying that's the same thing, but Christian Bale's Batman begs to differ. One of the first Batman stories I ever read, and to this day one of my favorite Batman stories, is The Long Halloween. It's not an uncommon opinion. A lot of people love this story. There is one moment in this story, though, that I don't think is talked about enough, where Batman goes up against Solomon Grundy. For those of you who don't know, Solomon Grundy is a zombie-like type character, but he's big and strong and brutal. But he's kind of this tortured soul who, in this particular iteration, lives in the sewers. And Batman goes down there chasing after another criminal. Him and Grundy get into a fight. Batman realizes that despite just getting into a fight with him, Grundy is, as I said, kind of this tortured soul, and Batman ultimately doesn't harbor any ill will towards him. So we get to see at the end of this issue, or towards the end of this issue, we get to see Batman share his Thanksgiving dinner with Solomon Grundy. And I thought that was beautiful. I don't see many people talking about that from this story. I loved it. It's exactly the kind of thing I want to feature on this list. Absolutely classic Batman story here. Batman, the Killing Joke. There's a reason this is one of the most iconic Batman stories. And there's a moment in the story that I think is probably the most direct example on this list of what I'm trying to talk about. It comes at the end of the story where Batman and Joker are confronting each other. They have, their whole fight and whatever. And it ends with Batman saying, like, "Hey, I want to help you." He wants to help Joker. He wants him to be better. He doesn't want to beat him to a pulp. He doesn't want to kill him. He wants to help Joker recover and redeem himself. And again, this is after the Joker paralyzed Barbara Gordon and tortured Jim Gordon. After all of this, Batman still wants to help him. Which, again, this is probably the most direct example I have on this list of what I'm talking about, which is Batman has tremendous empathy and really sees the humanity in his villains. Now, in this one, the Joker does eventually turn him down, saying that, it's far too late for that, or however he phrased it. But the point is that even though Joker turns down Batman's offer, Batman still presented that to him after everything that Joker put him through. With paralyzing Barbara Gordon and torturing Jim Gordon, even after all of that, Batman still wanted to help him. Now, a lot of people will argue that after Joker turns down Batman's help, that Batman kills Joker. I never read it that way. When I first read the story, I hadn't heard anyone say that, and that's not the takeaway that I had from this book. Even though looking back at it with some of the arguments people have made, I can definitely see where they're coming from. still don't know if I fully buy into it. In my head, and this is probably just my headcanon, I like to think that even in that moment after Joker turning down Batman's help, that Batman still wants to help him. That Batman still sees that humanity, that Batman still has that hope. That's what I think in my head. It's probably just my headcanon, but hey, it's a beautiful headcanon, and I'm gonna live in it. I know, this shot here is a little bit different. We're all gonna be okay. You're looking at me like you've never seen a YouTuber have to come back and do reshoots after he was editing the first attempt at this and realized he messed up some pretty significant details of this particular section. And he looks a little run down this time because he's fighting through a cold and he's coming off a long week of work and school and really didn't expect to be refilming some things today. I mean, that's not what's happening here, but don't be so judgmental. Before this video even started, I imagine you already knew this villain was going to be on the list, mostly because I plan on using her in the thumbnail, but also because if you're a Batman fan, if you're a Justice League fan, you know about this character. She has a very well-known moment within the DC animated universe. I am, of course, talking about Ace, not the Bat Hound, the telekinetic kid who could have wiped out humanity. For those of you who don't know, Ace is, as I said, this kid with incredible psychic powers, and we've seen her a couple of times within the Justice League mythos. There was one time where she was being held captive by Joker, and Joker was trying to use her psychic powers to drive humanity insane. And then in another episode, we see her off doing her own thing, with her powers having developed to the point where she can now manipulate reality, and she uses these new enhanced powers for some not so great things. And I will say, I do hesitate to classify Ace as a villain. Obviously, when she was being held captive by Joker, that's her being held captive by Joker. So you can't really fault her for that. But even in the episode where she was sort of doing some not so great things on her own accord, I think you have to keep in mind that, number one, she's a kid. I don't think they ever made it entirely clear exactly how old she is, but she's young. She's a kid. And number two, she grew up in an environment where people thought of her as a weapon pretty much the moment that they realized she had psychic powers. And you have to imagine that's a terrible way of growing up. You have all these people surrounding you and doing all these tests and stuff. And these people aren't there because they care about you and they want to nurture you. They're there because they want to see how much damage you can cause. So you can understand why Ace might rebel and go off and do these things. And I should make it clear that I don't want to excuse her behavior, as is so often the case with sympathetic villains. But in Ace's case especially, she's a kid, she had a terrible upbringing. I'm not going to excuse what she did, but I get it. Now, Batman comes into the equation because we have this scenario where Ace is going off, she's made some massive changes to reality, she's kind of locked herself in this forest fortress type thing, but she is about to die. We learn that Ace has a brain aneurysm, and when it bursts, because of all these telekinetic and psychic powers that she has, and because of all these changes that she has made to reality, that once that aneurysm bursts and she dies, there's going to be what is called a psychic backlash that will lead to massive destruction. So the plan is to kill Ace before that brain aneurysm can burst. And Batman volunteers to be the one who does so. If anyone knows Batman, he ain't gonna kill Ace. And he doesn't. So Batman goes into Ace's forest fortress thing, approaches her, and they begin to talk. Now, Ace knows, because of her psychic powers, that Batman isn't going to kill her. So she has a very candid conversation with Batman, vents a lot about what she has been through, the things that I just talked about a few moments ago. And eventually Batman sits down with her to comfort her. He holds her hand. She undoes all of the changes she has made to reality, and then she does in fact die. Batman being right there to comfort her through that process. And if this doesn't speak to Batman just being an incredible character who is full of love and hope and empathy despite his dark and brooding outward facade, I don't know what does. It's an incredible moment, arguably my favorite Batman moment in all of media, I had to feature it here. Well, it turns out ice packs are also a great way to hide tears. After going through a list of beautiful and sometimes emotional Batman moments. So while I get through those feelings, why don't you let me know your thoughts? What are some of your favorite Batman moments where you get to see how hopeful and empathetic he is? Let me know down in the comments, and I will see you, even if just figuratively, next time. Why do I feel like I didn't put the chair in the right spot?